What's going on out there, fishing fam? Ray Sharifi here with the Dirty Hookers, back with Ceasar. Got him back in the studio for us. You guys have been asking for him for quite some time now to come back and do some more tackle talk, so we got him back here with us to do a video breakdown tackle talk on strictly Cabrilla in this episode. A lot of you guys have been getting more and more interested in going out towards the Sea of Cortez and trying to fish Cabrilla and knock that off the bucket list, as I was pretty recently as well. So we're gonna go over everything that you need for those trips: rods, reels, terminal tackle, lures, everything in between. And we're gonna let Ceasar do a more in-depth talk through, and I'll jump in where I can as well. But he's got a lot more experience, 25 plus years fishing Sea of Cortez for Cabrilla, right?
Yes.
So he's gonna be able to teach us quite a few more things than I would myself. We're gonna go ahead and jump on into this video, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Okay, so this is basic selection of baits and colors that we throw for Cabrilla. Early morning, late afternoon, low light situations, you want to stay with the white colors, the white or the bright colors, or even the dark colors, believe it or not. Get bit really good during low light situations. And then once the sun peeks out over the hills and you get a little more light penetration, the bright colors get bit better. Metallics, the flashier colors get bit better. Early morning, late afternoon, when the fish are more aggressively feeding, the larger size baits, the 170 is what we recommend. Past like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, you need to drop down size to the 150 in the Hydro Minnow LC, or you'd be looking at the Mag Minnow, the Usuri Mag Minnows. These things actually cast pretty well too. But that smaller bait gets bit better middle of the day. When the fish are a little bit more finicky, you want to drop down in size on baits. So when you're fishing these baits, basically what you're looking for is you're looking for structure. Shoreline structure, sometimes even off the shoreline a little bit structure. The easiest target to cast these things at is boiler rocks. Guys see boiler rocks all the time, and good structure to fish. You want to look for areas where the bottom's not real sandy or flat. You want to look for structure that's basically real snaggy type of structure. Big boiler rocks, pinnacles, big slide areas, big stones scattered around. So you want to cast these things at those targets as close as you can. The other thing you got to realize too is that once the sun comes up a little bit, the fish are not going to be that tight and that shallow. So you want to kind of come off the rocks a little bit. You want to look for that dark spot in the water. That dark spot in the water a lot of times is submerged rocks that you really don't see on low light situations. And that usually holds your bigger fish when the sun comes up. So a lot of times what I like to do is one guy will cast at the structure on the shoreline. The other guy will cast parallel and look for the submerged rocks that are out a little further. You'd be surprised at how many fish will come up from 30, 40 feet to eat the jerkbait on the surface. But you want to make sure you look for color changes in the bottom, because that will signify whether it's sandy bottom, if it's a reefy bottom, if it's a boiler rock that's out there that you can't see. So something to pay attention to, makes a big difference. So we've covered the morning stuff and the late afternoon stuff. Now we're going to cover some stuff that you can fish during the middle of the day, 9, 10 o'clock on till lunchtime. The yo-yo jigs, your Salas DX, your 6X Juniors, your jig paras, 60 gram jig paras are very good for that late morning, early afternoon bite when the fish are down like 60, 80 feet of water, not super deep, but they're not coming up to eat the stuff on the surface. Crocodile is also a very good bait for that type of situation. These things, you want to cast it out, let it hit bottom, and then start burning it back all the way to the boat. Sometimes guys want to just hop in on the bottom like a rockfish jig, and you really don't. You want to cast it out, hit bottom, and burn it back as fast as you can. Once you get about noontime, 11 o'clock, noonish, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you might want to think about using the heavier jig, like a 6X, Tatty 4.0, even a 7X, when you're going to be fishing like anywhere from 80 to like 150 feet of water for the Cabrilla. A lot of the times the bigger Cabrilla are deeper during the middle of the day, so you might have to have these things to fish that stuff. But not to mention y'all's eat it too, but the bigger yo-yo jigs is a must-have when the sun's high, the fish are deep. This is something you need to fish. Now these things, you don't want to burn it all the way up. You don't want to burn it up 150 feet from the bottom. You want to burn these things about 30 to 40 cranks, let it go back to the bottom again. And usually you're going to get bit on the yo-yo jigs. It's going to be probably within 5 to 10 turns after picking it up off the bottom. So they're pretty close to the bottom. So something big like this and heavy to get down there. And depending on the time of year, the bait sizes will change. So you want to make sure you have some micro jigs with you, because sometimes especially during the fall, not so much in the spring, but during the fall season, In the winter, if you're going to Sea of Cortez, the bait are going to be about an inch and a half. They're really, really small baits. You've got to match the hatch. Can't stress that enough. If the baits are all this big, you want to fish lures that are that big. Basically, any of the small baits will work. Cold snipers, the Diawasicanas, the small jig paras in the smaller sizes will work really good. And that's mainly like, again, fall and winter type thing, probably like October on, when the micro baits start showing up, the Cabrilla really do key in on these little tiny baits. But the other thing is, during the rest of the time, when you're down there fishing, whether it be spring or summer, it's a good bait to fall back on when it's fishing slow. You drop down to a smaller bait, the Cabrilla eat it, but you also get a lot of other stuff that eat it. You get spotted bay bass that eat it, you get pompano that eat it, you get the lane snappers that eat it. It's a good thing to have in your box, in your arsenal with you. It's one thing you might want to think about heavily when you're gearing up for the Sea of Cortez, to have some micro baits with you too. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit more about the jerk baits here. My lure of choice, number one, is going to be the Yozuri Hydrominnow LC. I find out of the box, it's probably the most reliable, most consistent bait for the Cabrilla for throwing the jerk baits. The nice thing about these baits is they're ready to go out of the package. You don't have to change the hooks, you don't have to change the split rings, and they're ready to go. Other bait that I like to fish sometimes when the fish are a little bit deeper is the current snipers. Another good bait, but the problem is, as the package ones come with a smaller, lighter wire hook, the split rings are okay, but the hooks definitely need to be changed. I change it to a bigger hook, one size bigger than what they come with, and I go 1 gauge heavier on the hooks. What I recommend you can put on there's 2 styles of hooks you can use. I prefer the Owner STX 1.0 Zoe wire hook. It's a little bit lighter, so your bait has a little better swimming action. But if you're getting a hot, heavy frenzy bite, you might think about using the ST66 in the 1.0. It's a heavier wire hook, and these things will hold up pretty much anything you're gonna catch. But they do add a little more weight to your jerk bait, so they will kind of retard the action a little bit. Again, when it's a wide open bite, ST66s are fine. If they're a little more finicky, you might want to think about the STXs with the Zoe wires. The nice thing about the current snipers with putting the STXs or the ST66s on gets them to go a little bit deeper, where the Yozuris usually sit from 1 to 3 foot in depth. Sometimes you might get like 4 foot out of it in depth. Current snipers generally run between 5 to 7 feet, so they run a little bit deeper. So usually middle of the day or later on in the mornings, I'll switch to these things when the fish are a little bit deeper to get to eat these things. So, but the other thing you gotta be careful about is size. The current snipers, you want the 170s. You don't want the smaller ones, you want the 170s. The smaller ones just don't have as aggressive of an action to trigger the Cabrilla bite as the 170s do. And remember, these things have to be burned fast. All these baits are designed to be swam super fast. And I mean, we're fishing 6.5 to 1 to 7 to 1 reels to get them to swim. Anything slower than a 6.5, you have to work a lot harder to get bit. So it's important to make sure that the size of the baits and the action on the baits is very important. So action-wise, what you're looking for is a very fast, tight, wobbling action like this with a little bit of hunting. If it tracks a little bit off a little bit, that's good, but it has to be a tight action like this. What you don't want is a bait that has a rolling action. If it rolls like this, it's not what you want. You want a tight kicking action on these baits. Fast and tight, like this. Not rolling. Slow rolling baits do not get bit very well. Maybe when they're spawning and they're lethargic, they might eat the slow rolling baits, but generally the baits are all fast. So one of the questions that we get asked a lot is how many baits do we need to bring down there for Cabrilla fishing? This is what I bring every session I fish. There's 15 baits in this tray. This is what I use for one session. One session being on a Tony Reyes trip, I mean 1 morning trip, 6 hours of fishing. I will bring 15 baits. I'll bring at least 3 of every color that I fish pretty consistently. And then my favorite colors, I usually bring 4 or 5 because you will burn through these things. It's one of those things that you can run into a spot where the fish gets wide open. You're fishing a heavily structured area, a lot of rocks, a lot of reefs you don't see, and you can lose baits really quick. Our last trip with me and Ray, we had 1 session in the morning, 3 baits in under a minute.
Yeah, that was a pretty slow morning, I will say, but when we finally found a spot of fish, I broke off and Jorge broke off 2 times, And that was all in the matter of 45 seconds. That was in our previous Tony Reyes video. I'll dub that clip in right now. But one spot, it was just loaded with giants. And it wasn't to lure failure, it wasn't to hooks being pulled. It was from the sheer power of these fish because they were just massive. And it was from spectra blowups, which I personally and myself have never experienced that once in my life until that trip. And I saw it happen 3 times in a matter of 45 seconds.
I was the first one to blow off.
Yeah.
And you were laughing at me. And then right afterwards, you blew off, Jorge, our skipper, blew off. And then
he picked up his other rod.
He picked up his other rod and he blew off another one. So
yeah.
all that happened within 45 seconds. So you can imagine how many baits you can go through. So honestly, this is what I bring for one session. You might not need that much if you're not targeting Cabrilla only. So on our trips, that's what we target, is strictly Cabrilla. When we fish the Sea of Cortez or Bay of LA, our Pongero knows that that's what we target. We don't chase the yellowtail, we don't chase the Bycatches. All we do is chase Cabrilla. If you're not a hardcore Cabrilla guy, 6 baits per day you're gonna fish Cabrilla, you should have.
I'd say that's pretty fair.
6 baits per day and at least 2, if not 3 of the colors you think you're gonna use the most. Now, if you're one of those hardcore guys like Ray and I am, first time we went on the trip and I told him I bring 60 to 80 baits, he laughed at me. He says, "You're crazy." Actually, by day 3 of the trip, he's like, "Hey, you got any more of that other color? You got any more of this color?" Even though these baits are very, very durable, so you get a big Cabrilla and he starts torquing on it and twisting on the baits, they'll actually twist the hook hangers up. A Cabrilla can mess these baits up pretty good. Can't stress that enough that, you know, whatever favorite color bait you want, you gotta have multiples. There's nothing worse than being out there with your favorite color bait, you hook one, you lose it, and now you're like, oh my God, my confidence bait is gone.
It's funny you're saying that as you're holding that bait too. Last year, I went out to Bay of LA for my birthday, and Ceasar had lent me one of those yellow baits when it was almost reaching the market. It wasn't even there yet.
No, it's my sample.
And he lent it to me, and that was the only color that was working all day. And I
lost it.
So yes, it is very important to bring multiple of your favorite color, for sure.
So these are the rods that we use for Cabrilla. I fish one lighter one, and I fish a heavier one. On my lighter outfit, I fish 65-pound braid to 50-pound monotop shot. On my heavier outfit, I fish 80-pound braid to 80-pound leader. This is the reel I prefer to fish. It's the Daiwa Alexa T-Wing 300 because it fits in my hand a little better. Some guys like the 400. There's nothing wrong with fishing the 400. For me, it's just a little bit wider, so it's hard for me to grip and hold onto for a long period of time, casting all day long. I prefer the 300. The reason why guys like the 400, you can run a little bit heavier line on it, and then still maintain the spool diameter when you're casting and retrieving your lures. So that's the beauty of the 400. Personal preference on reels, you can use the Daiwa TWs, you can use the regular Alexas like these, which Ray likes to use, or even the Shimano Tranks. Any of the low profile reels will work with a level wind because you're casting so much and you're winding back. Guys ask me, hey, can I get away with the Trinidad 16? Absolutely you can. But you're casting so much and retrieving so often that if you're gonna have to guide your line back every cast, that you will start fatiguing out, you'll start getting tired and getting lazy and not laying the line on that nice. So your next cast, your third cast will have backlashes. You'll have all kinds of issues. So that's why we recommend level wind reels. Just to give you an idea, we average about 2 to 3 casts per minute is what the average is for us when we're fishing the Cabrilla fast and heavy. It's every minute we're making 2 to 3 casts. So you can imagine how fast you're working these things back in. But if you're throwing the jerkbaits, you definitely want that level wind, low profile reel. It's more comfortable in your hand. Casting's more consistent on these things. With casting retrieves, it's a lot more consistent. You don't have to worry about guiding the line back and forth. So, and you want to make sure you have heavy drags. Ray doesn't agree with me on this one. We've had this conversation before. I think the first time we met, he asked me, he goes, how much drag do you fish? I gave him my reel, and before I handed it to him, I went like this. And I go, okay, there you go. That's how much drag you fish.
Keep in mind, he did not pull on the line or anything. He went until the star stopped. He's like, here you go. Didn't even test it. I'm like, it's locked. He's like, yep, that's how I fish it. I'm like, oh, I think I might do a little bit lighter than that. He's like, that's fine. I'm telling you how I fish. This is what I do for Cabrilla. I'm like, all right. Me personally, I like going braid straight to fluoro. So for me, having a little bit of drag is my give. He fishes a little bit differently, so having that locked works better for him.
So the reason why I fish my drags super tight is you really don't want to give the fish an inch. If he gets an inch, gets his head turned, he's going to take line. I mean, Ray's seen it. We've hooked fish with drags absolutely hammered, and these fish will take the line off like you're in free spool. I mean, you're thumbing the spool and everything else to try to stop these fish. But if you're fishing a fast action rod, having a tight, super tight drag like that gives you no shock absorption. So what winds up happening is you want it blowing it off. That's why Ray has a tendency to fish drag backed off a little bit. He likes to fish a little faster rod. That's the two rods that I fish, is the medium light and the medium heavy. Unfortunately, these rods do not exist in this format. I built these two rods specifically for Cabrilla fishing. However, there are some new rods out there now, which is the Fishing Syndicate rod. They have an 800 medium and an 800 heavy, which is equivalent to what I'm fishing on my rods right now. They're 8 foot, mine are 7'10", so they're 2 inches longer for the guys that want the full 8 foot, not a shorter rod. They have a slower bend, and that slower bend allows the fish to get the bait in their mouth a little bit better. The other thing is, when that fish turns his head and gets that violent impact and stretch, the softer rods will act like a big shock absorber, take up some of that cushion that you don't give up with your drags. When your drags are button tight, the rod's going to have a little more bend to it. It's going to keep it from pulling the hooks off the fish. Again, this is a Fishing Syndicate inshore FSCIS 800M. So the 800M is equivalent to the lighter rod that I'm fishing, and then the 800H will be equivalent to the heavier rod that I fish. And they come in two styles. They come with a straight grip, and they also come with a split grip. But if you're looking for a rod for Cabrilla fishing jerkbaits, these would I recommend.
I would almost consider it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would almost consider it as like a oversized crankbait rod on steroids.
It's a super stiff crankbait rod, basically,
okay.
Yeah. Or a super stiff jerkbait rod, more realistically, yeah, that's what it is. It's a 50-pound jerkbait rod. Okay. So another reason why we fish these rods is that you never know what you're gonna hook when you're fishing the Cabrilla and the jerkbaits. So we've hooked everything from big yellowtail, big snappers, big sierras, groupers, anything you can think of. I mean, there's rooster fish, and there's all kinds of stuff you'll catch on these things. So you want to make sure you have a rod that's going to take some of that shock up, because some of those fish can be pretty violent. I was just telling Ray earlier, my last trip down to Sea of Cortez, I was fishing my medium light, and all of a sudden I hang a 55-pound rooster fish. So you never know what you're going to catch on these jerkbaits. Ray's back, he's got a big yellow. His personal best yellowtail was caught on one of these things.
Yeah, I was using that very rod myself last year in Bay of LA, and I caught my personal best yellowtail, my first home guard ever, and that was in 18 feet of water. So you will run into some very unique bycatches out there. Dorado too.
Dorado, lots of Dorado.
Right against the rocks.
Right against the rocks.
So you'll run into some very unique and very sizable fish, and that's why having rods like this is very, very key to have out there.
You know, and the other thing I can't stress enough, you want to have extra spool of braid with you. You don't have to have a giant spool of braid, but you should probably carry at least a one-shot 300-yard spool of braid. You make 500, 600, 700 casts a day. Well, that braid going back and forth through your guide is going to wear down. And so you find your braid will be damaged after a day of fishing. It's a good idea to have extra spools of braid with you. Definitely have extra top shot, that's a given, but you should have extra spools of braid with you for your reel that you're going to fish the most of, because you're going to need to be able to replace that braid if you're fishing multiple days.
All right, so I think we've gone over everything that there is to talk about with Cabrilla fishing and more. With all that being said, we are going to be doing a giveaway in this video. There will be 2 winners. The first winner is going to be getting a prize pack of 3 Yozuri jerkbait hydro minnows, 2 in the 170 size, 1 in the 150 size, along with 2 packs of the replacement hooks as well. Second winner will be getting a Fishing Syndicate inshore rod that we just talked about in this video. You can fish this here in Southern California for calico bass, even yellowtail,
White sea bass.
white sea bass, everything in between. But down in Sea of Cortez, this will be a very good Cabrilla stick as well. In order to enter this giveaway, I need you to do 3 things. You first need to be subscribed to me. Second, you need to like this video. And third, I want you to comment down below what you want to see in a future video coming up this year, whether it's another tackle talk that you want me to go over or get Ceasar in the studio again, or if you want to see me go over a new fishery, Pyramid Lake, fishing the Sierra Nevadas, maybe fishing the East Coast, whatever you guys want to see, I want you to comment down in this video below, and I will be picking one of these comments at random. For the rod giveaway, I will be picking one of these comments at random before the PCS show, and we will coordinate where we will meet up. You'll either have to come find me or Ceasar, and we'll go over to Fishing Syndicate and get you your rod. For the Yozuri and Owner Hooks prize pack, I will probably hold off on that until the next video next week after the show's over, and I'll pick one of those comments at random as well. Also, I'd like to give a big thank you to Owner Hooks. I'd like to give a big thank you to Yozuri, and I'd like to give a big thank you to Fishing Syndicate, giving us a possibility to give one of you lucky winners out there some free stuff. Thank you so much to Owner, Yozuri, and Fishing Syndicate to donating to not only this video, but the rest of the videos that's going to be a part of this series as well. And with all that being said, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. As always, thank you, Ceasar, for taking the time.
Well, absolutely.
Taking the time out of his day to go in depth for all this for you guys. I know you guys have been missing the tackle talks with Ceasar, so happy to put this together. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. There will be a little bit more videos going over the Sea of Cortez as well, along with our Tony Reyes footage that I'm still sorting through from 2023. Stay tuned for all that stuff as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and good luck to every one of you guys this season, as it is going to pick up here soon as well. So thank you all for watching. Please give this video a nice big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you all next time.